bill were the law today, I'd shut down the border right now and fix it quickly. And Congress needs to get it done.
When it comes to the border, political fireworks are starting to flare up. We'll break down everything you need to know. Tyler.
Cordell, it's very pleasant and very mild across the area, and we're going to talk about how long this trend is going to continue coming right up. You're watching Dakota News Now on Fox Sioux Falls.
This is Dakota News Now, your first alert station.
As the leader of our party, there is zero chance I will support this horrible open borders betrayal of America.
The U.S.-Mexico border sitting as a key talking point for politicians tonight, as a bipartisan bill that would restrict border access makes its way through Congress. It is 9 o'clock, and good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Allen.
And I'm Cordell Wright. Division surrounding the immigration bill is growing after former President Donald Trump came out in opposition, calling it a, quote, bad bill.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem as well as House Speaker Mike Johnson have both sided with Trump now.
To get a better understanding of the political gamesmanship being played, we sat down with a political science expert. He breaks down what we as South Dakotans need to know in our top story tonight.
We haven't seen this much try for both Republicans and Democrats since the George Bush administration.
Professor Emeritus of Political Science at the University of South Dakota, Michael Card, pointed out how over the past 25 years, the border has been used as a tool by both sides of the political aisle.
We have motivated interests telling us that there's nothing happening at the border, and motivated interests telling us that it's a war zone.
Governor Kristi Noem visited the border last week, and she is one that repeatedly referred to it as a war zone, specifically 4 times in a press release sent on Friday, and again during an interview on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday.
It is a dangerous situation. It is a war zone at our southern border.
Certainly, the use of any inflammatory language such as war zone isn't helping us reach a calm solution. A war zone is happening clearly in Ukraine. A war zone is clearly in Gaza. I don't know that we would describe a war zone along the Rio Grande River.
Another important consideration with this border battle is the political chess that's being played during an election year.
They were getting ready to pass a very bad bill, and I'll tell you what, a bad bill is, I'd rather have no bill than a bad bill.
Donald Trump has stated he wishes to use the border crisis as a campaign point, and Governor Noem has sided with him against the bill.
To say we have to accept this poison pill of a bill that it essentially codifies illegal immigration is just a terrible bill that I think President Trump is exactly right. It should not pass.
For most people, visiting the border to determine what is actually happening is not a viable option, which is why Card encourages Americans to try and remain neutral.
There's just no room for compromise if we take an extreme position, and we'll end up just using this for political bargaining points. And I don't think that's what Americans really want out of our government.
We reached out to Governor Noem's office to ask why she uses the term war zone when describing conditions at the southern border. Her office told us our question would be answered during an upcoming address to South Dakota lawmakers on Wednesday. Also adding, quote, Governor Noem has consistently called the situation at the southern border a war zone since 2021. What do South Dakotans need to know about the border that their governor can share with them? That's the question that you should be asking.